So how should we start? Like from the beginning?
Maybe each of us speaks about our double towns we are coming from, and we bring experiences with us.
Maybe you start as you're the longest in this journey.
Okay. Yes, I'm living in Frankfurt, Swobice, which is now called Swoopfurt. In Swoopfurt sprechamy in beiden języków gleichzeitig und skakamy von der einen Sprache in die drugie język. This is just shows that we can also mix languages. And I came here in 1998, 1999 from Poznan, originally from Bonn, first to Poznan. 8 years I lived in Poznan, and then I came here because here I really can be in both cultures, in both countries at a time. And I tried to develop a town which in a way is in between. That means Swoopfurt, the first half of Swobice, the second half of Frankfurt makes together Swoopfurt. And then I tried to develop it with the coat of arms and everything. And later I provided the first elections, communal elections from Swoopfurt, so that we have a kind of society which can take decisions and develop this area. And so it developed since 23 years. Now Swoopfurt is the capital of Nova America, as I call the whole border region between Poland and Germany now. And the strategy I call construction of reality as an applied method. So I mean, I believe that national states are constructions of reality. That means that if nobody believes in them anymore, they will not exist anymore. So we also can not only think but live space differently. And maybe that's enough for the beginning.
Yeah. I think in many parts of the story it connects to myself. But for me it was always a bit different. I was actually born in Nova Gorica. Nova Gorica is the youngest Slovenian town. Was made after the war, World War II. And it was always in my mind this kind of small socialistic town at the edge of the country. We lived there. We went, I don't know, to shopping to the other part, to Gorica. We went maybe sometimes to the seaside. But actually we were not feeling this as a part of the territory, a common territory. We felt here a line that was, it was a civilizational, existential, everyday line that you didn't cross. And so when I was young, I wanted to escape this city. I felt it small. I felt it like a small prison. And when I went away, and then I was studying in Ljubljana, then I was in Krakow for 1 year, I was in Prague. And after walking around the world, I found out that actually there, what I left, is something very interesting that is maybe not fully developed. There is a town that actually, objectively, is bigger, is double. It has actually 2 languages, it has 2 stories to tell. And for me, it became already, I was 27 or 26 years old, something that should be actually developed as one city. This is why I came back, and I put my efforts as a person who started to work in culture, in trying to shape as much as is my possibility, to shape the point of view of this kind of, we say, conurbation. So the concept of, as you say here, the Doppelstadt. So a concept that we have 2 things that are actually existing as themselves, but in the connection we get, we don't lose the first things, but we get a new space that is broader, that is much more interesting, and that is especially has on many things two point of views. So how to actually live this kind of space that is not put inside already made national narrative, but it has more of them, but at the same time a space to make and think another, a new narrative of our own. And I think that what, not only me, there are many people, many artists and many organizations who are working in this, on these topics in my my double hometown, is especially through actually thinking about the future in a way, even in discovering the past, because this territory actually already existed as a mixed and common territory, but the 20th century with two world wars actually broke it in two and made two cities, but actually, you know, if there were one once, why couldn't be even?
I think you should say one very important thing, that you run a culture hub directly on the borderline in the so-called Carinarnica.
Yes, actually, when we started to shifting this idea, what will our city, just one, Nova Gorica, be in the next years? Many cultural organizations and individuals thought that the idea should be shaped around this border and how to cross borders. So the border is in a way a place where things stop and the places are normally degraded. And we wanted to put a completely new spin on this. So we asked for the former Czech border crossing checkpoint, the only one that was actually between two cities, that it could be put in the cultural usage. And we now have, we managed now this small cultural hub that is mostly made for activities and reflections around the border issues or maybe transborder issues.
Tanel, maybe.
Yeah, I think my story is like that. I don't relate to any particular place, and therefore I find myself to be somehow on the border all the time, in transition, always a visitor and never kind of settling. Yeah, since my childhood I shared my life between two cities, Tallinn and Tartu. One is second largest, the other is the capital. But what brought me to Valga that I represent here in this project, sort of. No, I don't represent actually, but I kind of have a material from this place. What brought me to Valga, the divided city on the border between Estonia and Latvia, was my first visit to Šlupfurt here. It was 9 years ago when I visited Michael. When I heard about Michael in Poznan from an artist who said that there is somebody doing a divided city or united city project here. And I made a video in Šlupfurt and I made an interview with Michael. And then I went back to Estonia and I thought, wow, we have Valga. Maybe we should somehow make an attempt to philosophize over the possibility to handle it as one city, because the city officially itself calls itself like one city and two states. So it's somehow in the air already, and it's a common notion in all over Europe, where is Schengen border. So around 4 years ago, I started a 2-year project in Valga, which was a curatorial project which involved several artists and other cultural people to stay for residencies in this city, to make a research in this city, and to make exhibition in this city, like in the existing cultural institutions there. And I also decided to open a temporary gallery space in Valga Valka that was running like during 1 year only. And then the project got finished, and now I'm here, and I've changed the location again.
Tanel, you said something very interesting to me, that you somehow are somebody who is traveling around, who's unquiet in a way. For me, this was a very similar experience, yet in school, that I felt that I do not belong to the whole group of my class, that I felt somehow being outside. And this feeling of not belonging to something brought me finally to this idea of in-between, that I've said that finally it is not so bad to not be totally in, because this way gives me another point of view, and I think this personal aspects can be very important too.
Yeah, and therefore you kind of create your own space, your own world, let's say, like in your case is Nova America, sort of.
Yeah.
I think in my case it was something similar actually. Now I think about it first time. Because what brought me here was actually my research about East Europe and the division between East and West, like Europe being divided into East and West even after the end of the Cold War. Because it made sense during the Cold War. There was the Iron Curtain from Stettin to Trieste, this famous quotation from Winston Churchill. And the Iron Curtain was right here, from Stettin along this river, and but you know, not along this river. I mean, also DDR was part of the East Europe. But now somehow, when Germany is united, then the Germany somehow calls itself West, and they even, you know, removed in Berlin. They removed the Ost sign from the Volksbühne roof some years ago, and saying that no more East and West, that now it's all West. But still somehow Poland, for example, is called Eastern Europe. Baltic states, where I come from, is called Eastern Europe. Why still keep, I mean, the Cold War is ended. Why still keep, you know, it divided like this? Especially now when Russia has started a totally, you know, straightforward war against the West. And we in the Baltics and we in Poland, we are completely against Russia. We're fighting against them. We shouldn't call ourselves East anymore, you know, that division. So for me, actually, my identity was being an East European and having like a big homeland. Like from the Baltics to Albania, Kosovo, that was my homeland. Like a bit this idea of intermarinum that Poland has in the interwar period. And I never considered Russia as part of it, of course. I mean, I thought that East Europe is something in between. And yeah, now it's also the question how these boundaries and borders are changing, how I see this, how we should, you know, redefine ourselves, how we should maybe create new borders. Maybe there are places where we really need the borders. Maybe we need a border between Russia and the West right now, but we need boundaries. We need to understand who is who, you know, identities.
You know that in a way, on a personal level, the skin is my border. There's an inside and outside, so borders are there anyway. Looking at them only in a negative way would be a mistake, I think. But the question is, how does it look like? And how do we create somehow a we, which is a cross-border, a we to overcome this kind of division and this stepping backwards into national state system, especially in times when we have to challenge climate change, which is a global phenomena, and we cannot solve this as national states.
Yeah, I actually think that in Europe, we were doing our project in Europe because in the Europe one thing is already solved, let's say, with the Schengen Agreement, even though, as we saw it in the Corona time, it's not so solved as it looked like, but still there are no hard borders inside between the states anymore. But somehow these places didn't really connect with each other. Like that European Union is actually still just a club of national states where the capitals of each country is connected with each other and becoming even much more or less similar to each other. If you look today, Budapest and Ljubljana and Berlin and we more or less see the same styles, the same kind of restaurants and so on. But on the other side, we have whole big territories which are still kind of left apart. We are still kind of peripherized. And this is strange because in a way, what is going on in the Schengen area today is the touching of the two cultures, is the place of meeting, but it's not put in any logic anymore. Maybe still these places are kind of slaves of the narrative of the national state. And I think that here is a lot to do, and in activities in this that are still not planned on the European level, we're kind of reinventing how Europe actually should exist.
That is why I think I say we now as activists and not as politicians, we can redefine Europe or especially border regions in a different way, because we are not limited. I use this expression, limited in this way than bordered. We are not limited by all these kind of so-called realities we have to deal with. We can just think it differently and then live it differently. And I think we should not leave it to the politicians only to decide what it is about. And we see that everybody is going back to national state right now, to this narrow-minded, egoistic way of thinking, and that is why we are doing this. Because in a way, I don't want to be arrogant, but this is a kind of avant-garde living at the border regions. We are not the periphery; we are the center of the new chances, and maybe we should treat the former capitals as peripheries of the former old world.
Berlinchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think here's a very important question. If we, with Europe, manage to actually address the border issues in a way that we are not changing the border, but we are kind of putting plants on it, how I will say, so that we show even to other places that now have a huge border issues, that actually for having a living space you don't need actually to move the borders with your army, but actually just to reverse a bit your kind of activities and show that in a way it is possible, that we are here generating already some practices of coexistence and collaborating. So yeah, maybe I think that our project has kind of optimism, and I think it's not just a utopian optimism. I think it's something that is already in some parts lived in maybe some small way, but still lived in practice of the everyday life.
I think that it makes sense that borders are somehow avant-gardistic places, but avant-gardistic, in what sense? We shouldn't also somehow, in a hollow way, compensate our castration for being a province or periphery. But we should really look into this, that how we actually can, in these regions, define what Europe is. I had an argument with a former or kind of a politician in Estonia who said to me that European values are just blah blah blah, that they're just abstraction, that they are not real. And I said, but go to the border and see what is European value. Go to Schlupfurt, cross the border, go to Komarno-Komarom, go to Haparanda-Tornio, go to this Valga-Valka, for example, go to this European divided cities without border, and you see what Europe is. You just walk and nobody's stopping you, nothing happens. And then you go, please, to Estonian-Russian border and see what European values are not, or you will see how European values should be protected. And then he said, okay, I agree. And this, in that sense, we are avant-garde. That I don't know. I mean, if we're center, I'm afraid that centers will always remain center. But we can be the center of an event, because event is an abstraction. But event is also very realistic. Event is, let's say, a huge change. Pandemic was an event. And where did we really touch the pandemic? It was in border regions that were immediately closed. The event is a statehood, actually. Let's say it's an event. Where is statehood? How statehood is manifested by border controls, and we see if the statehood is liberal, open. Our borders are open. We can cross freely. If statehood becomes a dictatorial, dictatorship, we immediately sense what it is.
I think, you're totally right. But I would like to go into the direction of our personal engagement, because this is the very big problem, and there very easily we can say, oh, what can we small people here change or do? But I think the power is in each person, everybody who's taking part in this transbordering process, with small, very small projects, or you call it events, things that make a everyday life link, cultural link, any kind of link. These are things that are moving and changing in a way the perception. Because if I look back on Frankfurt, Słubice, when I came here, this was the outer border of the European Union. We had to make large queues to cross the border. We had to find ways how we can cross it. And during pandemic situation, of course, the border was closed. But for example, with Anja Panekusz from the gallery Okno in Słubice, we found ways to write each other special permissions which we could show to the border controls. So we practiced something that goes around these controls in a way and makes again things openly and possible. So I think this is kind of, if the more people there are who are doing this, the less this national state closing will work.
Yeah, I agree. I think that actually in the border areas things are not thought through because the nation state where the media actually lives and where the narratives of how to live exist, they are not always put in the test in the border areas. So the border areas don't have a guideline how to actually manage things. You were talking now about Corona. Yes, because there are no guidelines how we can handle a pandemic situation on the border areas. So the first idea is make a border, because the border works in the same way, in two ways. First, it doesn't let somebody in, and it doesn't let somebody out. But this is not how should things be, because people already use the space, and so everything that we managed to do, we kind of made a new guideline. We invented it. This is why actually is the border areas are always creation, or it will be for some year, creation of something new, because people from the territory, from their usage and from their mind must discover it. And I think a project like Transbordering Laboratory can put what others learned in this time of the opening borders, to put for us to use, to make some, let's say, guidelines, to invent some new ways of actually living the space. And in this way, it's also, what avant-garde means. So actually, we, by our life, by our activities, are actually inventing this transborder life that it didn't exist now for as much as modern borders exists.
Maybe at the end we can still focus on this very important topic on we and the others, on how to cross this dialectic of always creating. If we create a group of people, then we have us, and then somewhere are the others. And this is, to me, the main dialectic which is on the base of every national state. That there is a we, and we use different strategies, like for example sport, 22 people running behind a ball and one is winning, and then the whole nation is proud. This is this kind of identification building, and if it will not work anymore, then I think this identification with the nation will fall apart. So the question is of how can we build an identification which is not excluding somebody. I think this is a very deep and question that we cannot solve, but in just one talk. But it is on the basic of everything we do. No?
I think it's a big privilege to talk about the Schengen borders and these problematics of nation state and coexistence in the context of Europe, because we are doing it in the heart of Europe. But Europe has also outskirts, and there's the concept of Europe as a fortress Europe, which does not welcome outsiders. So let's say Europe is something that are we, us, different nation states trying to transborder and living, out these privileges what European Union offers, but then there are these others, and we see what is happening in Mediterranean Sea, in the border of Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, and so on. So these are the other layers of transbordering, and in these other layers, I think transbordering has very difficult and different conditions. And our project also includes a few, maybe two difficult border situations. Like you visited Nicosia, and there will be somebody coming from Narva in Vangorod to our conference. So we should, also think about like we, and what is the content, the inside, the heart of the we, which is here in Schluppfurt. But then, what are the outskirts of the we? Because this we might become a fortress.
Then this is the question of if we look at this problem through the prism of climate change, then the we should be all the whole population of this planet. And right now, I do not see how get to this, because we can only deal with climate change if we get to this common we. And of course, this sounds very utopian now, but I think this is the clue challenge for the future, how to go on with this problem.
Yeah, I think that the border double town especially, but let's say the border regions teach us something very important, actually, that the creation of the national identity is based on somehow norms, the norms of language, the norms of the true history of their nations and so on. It's based on some narratives that should be, that everyone should conform to it. But border regions teach us that actually we both have kind of a same problems, this part, or even same identity. People from the border regions many time feel that they have something in common with other people of border regions, but that they are not the same. So kind of this togetherness of the two different people from different identities should not be replaced with just a normal new we, but should be put a step further in this let's say in this approach that we are different, but we kind of come together, so to understand this commonness as a place of diversity. So I think this is what we feel on the border regions where we live, and I think this is a we that could actually be a part of the concept of this new Europe that we are planning, and kind of maybe this we will help to further and address these problems that are actually planetary problems.
Well, then that's very important what you said, because we think that we have an entity, and there is this citation of Arthur Rimbaud, "Je est un autre," I is another, which in a way shows that each of us are constructing ourselves all the time, trying to eliminate everything we don't like, and trying to see ourselves in the best way we can see ourselves. So we are all in this kind of mode, in this process of all the time redefining ourselves. And when we understand this, and we are strong enough to accept and but I will just continue the sentence. If we understand this and we can laugh about it ourselves, I think then we are on the best way to change this concept of we and the others.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
There could be contexts where, let's say, a nation state could be a manifestation of a new we, which has been neglected and put down. Let's take Russian Federation, for example, which consists of formally a lot of republics. There's a lot of republics in the Russian Federation, but they are not real republics. They are not nation states. They are, like these federative subjects. But they are all completely, oppressed by a huge we, which says that nation state is bad, it's nationalism, it's, friendship of nations, but actually it's one big nation state of Russia, which is an imperium, and which is invasive, needs more and more space. So I think in that context, the nation state would be a liberating phase, at least one step towards becoming, towards getting rid of borders, because it was Baltic states, for example, and in Baltic states, nation state was a first manifestation against imperialism. Then you create the nation state, and the nation state joins Europe and gets rid of the borders and starts to discuss over if we need a nation state at all, and so on. So these are this kind of steps. It's like development.
Yeah. So you say that national state can be something important to become independent from a big structure which is getting on it, but then you have to get healthy that way that you are able to again say, okay, and now we are part of the European Union, or now we can I think it is always something about respect. We also have these regions within, for example, here nearby is the Lausitz, where the Sorbs is a minority that has no own state, or you can take the Catalonians or the Kurdish people and so on. They all have a right to be with their culture, with their feeling of identity. And in our discussion, I think we can feel this tension between all these sides of reconstructing, of understanding that all this kind of construction is also in a way ridiculous, but on the other hand it is not. And I think the clue is in understanding this and playing with this, and not being ready to die for your manifestation of us.
Yeah, I think it has many issues around this, and but maybe this will be also the debate that will form our network in the future, and as we can maybe use this debate to actually invite people who are interested in this project, in these topics, to join us, maybe for the conference next year, because this year we are already full.
Bye bye.